Hi, welcome to Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson. I'm your host, Dr. Jefferson, and today we're going to have a conversation about a very interesting and desired topic sex. We're going to talk about the implications, the scientific implications of sex on your neurochemicals, what is really happening in your brain when your body is engaged in sex, the actual act, and of course, when we are in the process of turning our partner on and approaching them systematically throughout the day when we want sex, right? So, we're going to have a pretty interesting conversation. So, I will see you guys back in about 3 minutes once the show intro plays and it's done. Hold on to your seat. So, welcome back. Thank you guys for sitting with me and taking the time to look through all of those basic disclaimers and the show intro and all that good stuff. Please understand that although I am a psychotherapist who is a sex therapist, this show does not replace the need for you to go out there and get proper help from a psychotherapist who specializes in treating people with sexualized issues or issues with their incongruence with their sex life. Okay. So, the topic says that basically bad sex leads to depression. And if we talked about the science behind what's happening over the course of foreplay and the course of actually engaging in sex, we would understand that good sex, as opposed to bad sex or the act of sex in its completion or its entirety, contributes to a great level of euphoria and satisfaction in human beings in general. So I'm going to get started today and we're going to talk a little bit about the science behind it. But I want to start with the question, what exactly is bad sex for you? What makes the encounter an undesired encounter in the aftermath for you? And how do you notice you respond to bad sex, right? So before we get into this particular one, I'm going to give you guys some time to kind of give me the answer as to what exactly bad sex looks like for you. And we're going to talk about the science behind depression a bit. Okay. So, depression doesn't start outside of the body with your external stimuli, it typically starts inside of the brain. So your brain has a tremendous amount of, or your hypothalamus in your brain has a tremendous amount to do with how you feel, with the way that you emote, and if you emote at all. Your emotions, your feelings, the things that you are motivated to actually get up and do. So your behaviors, the way that your brain is releasing the necessary chemicals throughout the day in response to the things that you're engaged in has a lot to do with whether or not you feel depressed or go through very low moods, right? Because when we talk about clinical depression, it's a little bit different than the depressive mood. Depressive moods are when we find ourselves just kind of going through these moments where we really don't feel like ourselves and we're not motivated to do the things, even the things that we typically like to engage in. Okay. So when we think about it, right? Bad sex, if we are feeling let down, that's something that could lead to a mood that is one or the other. Could lead to a mood that is depressive in its presentation, could lead to a mood that's more angry in its presentation. Either way, we are hurt because what we were expecting to get out of an encounter, we just didn't get it, right? And so I really want to talk to you guys about the science behind sex as it correlates with the depressive component, so you guys understand the impact of the brain chemicals, those neurochemicals being released into your bloodstream appropriately as a result of the sexual encounter. So if we went from the very beginning, right, and we talked about the importance of sex overall, it's a part of who we are as people because it definitely affects the way that we relate to people. And if you think about it, sex has found a way to infiltrate every single part of our lives today. So if you were to take a picture, and what we typically use to study sex is fMRI scans, and those are functional images basically of the brain whenever you're doing something. We're taking little pictures and video, if you will, to track what's going on. You would see that every single brain reaction or shift inside of your brain happens systematically. It all works together. When we find ourselves sexually aroused, the limbic system inside of your brain is flooded with a surge of those neurochemicals, right? So, neurochemicals are what we call messengers of the brain, chemical messengers of the brain. They transmit a tremendous amount of different types of emotions, if you will, by those the transmissions of the different chemicals, hormones throughout your bloodstream. So we have emotions, feelings, love, attachment, feelings of closeness, those overall pleasure principles, and things like that. These determine the intensity of your sexual climax. And what happens is if you don't get enough of that during the encounter, it could definitely lead to what is considered to be bad sex because you're not getting what it is that your body and your brain actually needs from the encounter in and of itself. Okay. So women and men tend to experience the outcomes of sex in a very different way simply because we have two different types of chemicals that are there for the same reason, right? So your hypothalamus releases an extra boost of testosterone when it's turned on, when you're turned on typically by sense or touch. And if you're a man and if you're a woman, it's estrogen, right? So both of these kind of get things going. And then once these things are going, you have an increase of other neurochemicals. And what happens is, especially when we talk about the increase of cortisol is kind of like a stress inducing chemical. And so, if you have an increase in cortisol, at some point that cortisol stress level has, or that stress level needs to come down. And that is what the sex is supposed to do for that particular event. But typically, we're already stressed because of our everyday interactions with life and people and work and the various systems that we're attached to. So, um, the orgasmic experience, right? So, your orgasmic experience is your body's physiological response to that same said stimulation that happens throughout sex after the foreplay. That built up tension is there, and now it's time to release it, right? And typically, the climactic response or the orgasm is prompted by the release of the hormones that are produced inside of the hypothalamus, which are oxytocin and vasopressin. So this part of your brain also produces dopamine. We talked about depression, right? So if depression is low feelings of mood incongruence and things like that, if we feel low, what happens is when we get oxytocin or vasopressin produced inside of our brain, now we feel a little bit better. We feel more balanced, and now we're more eager to jump in and do things, right? So typically, there are no issues if we can get these chemicals produced. However, when we're engaged in the act of sex and we're working ourselves up and we're finding ourselves deeply dissatisfied, those continued releases just simply do not happen because that big O doesn't happen. The orgasm doesn't happen. So now your mood is lower than it was when you first started out. So if you were pretty balanced, you're definitely in a depressed state of mind, maybe a depressed mood, and definitely angry because now you feel like you just wasted your sexual energy. Um, so what I like to say when people say, bad sex or lack of sex leads to depression, yeah, it can. It can definitely do that. It could put you on edge. It could make you feel away, or it could put you in a place of serious excitement. Because the other thing that's happening inside of your brain at the same time is prolactin is released as a result of a male having an orgasm, and that decreases his muscle viscosity. And what happens is now he doesn't have as much energy as he had, the energy that's needed to engage in sex, right? Because also our metabolism is increasing while we're engaging in sex and things like that. So what happens is when a man experiences that orgasm and that prolactin is released, we see the body responding with kind of like this knee-jerk response, involuntary vibrations and things like that, which are very much the same as when a woman has experiences her orgasm, and her climax is putting her in a place to where she can barely feel her legs, right? And they just start shaking. You really can't control them. Those are the natural responses, physiological responses of sex. However, those only happen when you have an orgasm. So the release or continued release of those dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, those types of chemicals, those feel good chemicals, they're not being released in an abundance if you don't have that orgasm. You kind of see where I'm going? So it can lead to you feeling even lower and angry, upset, whatever. So, my question is, how important is sex in a relationship to you? And then also, should dating include sex? Somebody posted inside of a single therapist. Hold on. It's a single group for therapists thing. We're going to go to it right now. The post in and of itself said, stop dating if you're not ready to have sex. That's what that said. So I'm going to go here. And I'm going to read the specific screenshot that they were exploring in that group. So it came from Melanated Minds on Facebook. And it says, women expect men to take them out on dates and pay, but don't expect us to want sex. I'm saying, stop going out on dates with men if you're not ready or don't intend on having sex. I know the free meal and feeling and looking good is fun, but no man likes to be misled, and we all want to be fucked on. So stop playing. So that was his message. Okay. So I'm going to ask you guys the question, should dating include sex? Simply because even in last night's show, and we've kind of talked about this in a couple of shows at this point, dating is a means to getting to a different level in relationships, okay? So what happens when, as a result of you going on this date, you decide it's not going to work, right? What do you do with that? Over the course of a woman's lifespan, prior to her actually meeting her husband that's going to marry her, or the person that she wants to go steady with, I can only imagine, like, the woman's probably going to have thousands of dates, okay, being single, searching for the right person, especially if they're meeting people in person, right? Now, that would mean that she would have sex with those thousands of people if she were expected to have sex upon every date that she went on. So my thing is, if you want a woman to have sex with every man she goes on a date with, every man that pays for a meal, come on. You're not really expecting to get much of anything. There used to be a time where men wanted a woman to be preserved for him. And that doesn't mean that there weren't potential suitors before him that dated her, courted her, and she chose different, or her family chose different. It just means that maybe she was waiting on the right one and the right one was him. So I want to know how important sex and dating, the correlation, the two mixing and intermingling with one another, how important are those things to you guys, considering everything that we just discussed about the chemicals that are released in the brain over the course of sex and what the outcomes potentially are? Hey, Kale, what's going on? But yeah, so I thought that that was really interesting. And I want to know how you guys feel about his message, because I do think that modern day society does have some level of, I don't know, maybe there's a bit of congruence there. Maybe. I think that modern day society is extremely sexually active and foreplay goes out of the window. So there is no buildup prior to the sexual engagement part. And I think that because sex is so minimized now, right? The value for it and what it means to people. Maybe people just are not experiencing climactic experiences at all anymore simply because nobody cares if it's good or bad. The quality of the sex goes out of the window, you know? But what is bad sex to you? What do you guys think is bad sex versus good sex? What makes it good sex for you? Okay. I've talked about the neurochemicals that are released in the brain and the outcome to be expected from sexual engagement. I want to know from you guys, what are you expecting when you find yourself engaging in sexual intimacy with someone and then they fall short of the prize, right? The prize being the big O, the orgasm, climax. So, whoa, that was great, right? That part. What happens for you when your partner ceases to get you off after sex, after all of that buildup, all of these chemicals that have gone through your bloodstream from your brain, and now you don't get that big release? Are you the person that's wrapped up in your bed and doesn't want to leave for like 3 days because you're just like disappointed? Or are you the person who's finding a quick fling and hookup website on your phone in the immediate aftermath and hooking up with somebody that potentially is going to let you down again? Or are you the person who's going to a guaranteed climactic experience and allowing your hand or your toys to get you off when that person exits the bed? So I want to know how you guys feel about this topic. Let me know what you think, and let me know what you think about that very complex process that the hypothalamus engages in over the course of you having sexual intercourse and building up to that moment. All right. So that is pretty much all that I've got, you guys. I just wanted to come on here briefly and have this discussion. Be sure to check out the show tomorrow. It's going to be a restream of a very interesting topic that we had previously on the show. You guys should definitely get reminders. And if you are not already subscribed to my channel, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe buttons on YouTube. And the YouTube link is on the other channels as well, platforms that I'm airing this content on right now. But go ahead and hit those buttons. And when you get to YouTube, be sure and hit the notification bell so that you can get those little messages that let you know I'm going to be live on the show when I am going to be. So without further ado, have a great night, you guys, and go out there and be positive. And if you cannot be a positive impact on somebody else's life and their energy, please don't go out there and impede on the positive energy or not. Whatever it is they got going on. Okay. Don't impede on that. So that is all I've got, you guys. I love you guys. Take care. Big shout out to the chat. I hope that you guys are well tonight. Enjoy your night. Later days. Bye.
A life can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I'll rip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.
I said it, phenomenon.